Hello, everybody. Welcome back. YouTube.com/GeekLoud. Thursday night, 8 p.m. Gaming Enforcement Agency. And I'm joined this evening in the second slot by Ace. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, I didn't realise I got the second slot. In your jocks, bully. In your jocks, baby. Here I am. I'm here to stay. You can't get me out of here. Forever.
Nice work. And of course, there is Bully in that third slot. How are you, mate?
Oh, I'm doing all right, but I'll tell you what, I'm used to holding everyone up, so just in my usual position there in the bottom, and I'll keep this thing locked and loaded and strong.
Lovely work. In that case, I'll tell all the fine viewers how this show goes. We start off with games, interrogation, and deliberation. It is the 6 games the three of us have been playing in the past week. Then, of course, it's the news segment. Bully, how many news stories do we have this evening? I'll go ahead and say it's 7 stories in the news this evening. And then we've got the standoff, that's everyone's favorite segment, the best of video gaming up against the other best of video gaming. There's also 7 entrants in there. Bully, can you tell us the constraints at all, my friend?
Oh, I can. Bit of a touchstone, I guess. So we've had 2023 is, in my opinion, one of the biggest years in gaming that we have ever seen in terms of massive releases. So we are going to reflect on what we have played so far this year and what is our favourite. So we're standing off the best of 2023 up until the point we're about to hit some massive releases. So some of these may into the game of the year can tension towards the end, but there's still plenty to come. So that will be well up in the air come the end of the year.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you very much. For the viewers along, you can comment as we go. And, of course, you can vote in the standoff when we get there. Without further delay, let's get into games, interrogation, and deliberation. First up this week, I'm handing it over to you, Bully. You've been playing some Lies of P on Xbox through Game Pass, I imagine.
I have Lies of P on Game Pass. I think it's also on the PlayStation as well. But this is the Bloodborne 2 game that we've never gotten. The way it's going, I'm not sure we ever will get. But certainly, if you play through it, you can see on the screen there. If you sort of get into some of the gameplay, it is almost the setting and the graphics and the atmosphere is almost on par with Bloodborne now. The difference is, for those that aren't aware, is that you're actually playing as the character Pinocchio. I think there's a character called Gemini or something, which I think is supposed to be
Jiminy Cricket.
Jiminy Cricket. And I haven't. I'm not going to spoil it, but I don't. There is discussion of Geppetto, but I haven't managed to locate him as of yet. But it certainly does have that Soulsborne gameplay to it. You've got you've got to work through the mechanics of each enemy that you come across and work out whether you're going to dodge, whether you're going to block. There's very similar mechanics to the Soulsborne games. You've got a standard attack on the right button and a heavy attack on the right trigger. You've got I think it's X to use your heal, and you get a certain amount of those. I do notice one difference in Lies of P though is so when in the Soulsborne games, generally, once you've depleted all of your health items, that's it. You're sort of stuck until you can get back to another bonfire. But with this one, there's an interesting mechanic whereby once you've used them all, if you continue to, every time you continue to attack an enemy, it begins to start to refill your last vial to the point where you can then reuse that vial again. So, and then once you've used it again, if you attack enough enemies, you can keep rebuilding it up. So it sort of gives that interesting mechanic as well. I've quite enjoyed the opening sort of 3 or 4 hours that I've played. I've beaten the first boss, which, funnily enough, I never did on the demo that was released about 6 months ago. But it took me 2 or 3 goes this time and managed to work through it. So I don't know whether that's just some of the mechanics that have changed from when that demo was released, but it certainly felt a lot smoother and a lot fairer of a fight than sort of what I found in the demo. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, Troy, but I mean, I've certainly really enjoyed it. The only thing, and whether it's just a balancing thing or whether it's just something you need to get used to, is with the Soulsborne games, that your attack speed, for the most part, if you've got a heavy weapon, it's always going to be a bit slower. But in most of the Soulsborne games and Elden Ring and those sort of things, if you take a middle tier weapon that's not too heavy, not too light, generally your attack speed is more or less on par with most of the enemies, but there might be the odd one. But I've really found in this game that the your attack speed seems to be really slow compared to theirs, and you'll think that you can find, you might block an attack or dodge an attack. You've got enough time to get, a couple of hits in, and you can't even get one in before they've sort of swung around and hit you another 2 or 3 times. And I found that really frustrating as well.
Can I ask, mate, on that, which there's 3 builds at the start you get to pick from. Which build did you go with?
I think it was the rapier. So which I think from memory was basically that middle level. So it wasn't the heavy weapon. It was just sort of that middle tier weapon that balances damage and speed. So
Yeah.
that's sort of what I went with for that particular reason. And I know you've got I think just before the first boss that you play through, you come to a store where you can basically repurchase one of those weapons that you were offered in that opening section. So you can change through the different ones you want. But I've just sort of found it's almost, I'm not saying it's unfair, but it's just one of those things that you sort of got to get used to with the mechanics, that you think that you've got an ability to strike, but if you've literally got to, either block or dodge, and the second that you do that, you've then got to launch into an attack rather than block, wait to see what they're doing, whether they're going to attack or move, and then you try to attack, because by that stage it's too late. So it's one of those things that, as I said, whether it can be tightened in a patch, I'm not sure, or whether that's done by design, and it's just something you're going to have to get used to. I'm not sure. We'll see how it plays out. But
it reminds me a little of. Did you get much into Sekiro at all?
Not really.
There were a couple of weapons in Sekiro where exactly what you're saying, and I second your comments, mate. That's exactly the experience I've had. But it feels like they've taken a few of the combat mechanics or design choices by FromSoft in Sekiro, and then they've applied them here. So it's different to Bloodborne. It feels a little bit more Sekiro in the combat to me.
The only sort of counterpoint to that, I guess I'd say, is it has that similar mechanic out of Bloodborne, where if you take damage, if you're quick enough to re-damage the enemy, you can actually refill part of that damage that was taken from you. So,
yep.
Whereas I don't think from memory Sekiro had that. So they're sort of on one hand saying we want you to be aggressive and attack, but on the other hand, the enemy design and the enemy attack patterns don't necessarily allow for that, which is, and that's probably where the frustration lies, is that it's leading you down a path to play a certain style, but it doesn't actually allow you to fully utilize that style while you're playing it. And I guess that's where the frustration lies for me. And now, having said all that, I will point out, though, that I'm not the greatest Soulsborne player in the world. I don't think I've finished any. I enjoy playing them, and I enjoy them for what they are, but I don't think I've ever gone to the point of finishing them all. I just get too frustrated at some various point. But all up between all of the Soulsborne games, I've probably played them for about 70 or 80 hours, combined. So it's not like I don't have any experience in it whatsoever. It's just that, I'm sort of still sitting on the fence mechanic-wise, I guess, is where I'm at. And maybe if I put another 5 or 10 hours into it and sort of get a bit more into that, get a bit more used to the combat and the style that they want you to play, it might sort of click at some point. I'm not sure, but all that aside, though, as I mentioned at the start, the atmosphere is fantastic. I've found that the graphical settings have been really good. Like, it's really moody, it's dark, it's an interesting town that you're sort of wandering through. It's got very much the Soulsborne. Will give you just a little glimpse of what's going on, but you need to work out things for yourself through exploration of the world and meeting characters and picking up notes and various things. That's how you get your story, very much like the Soulsborne's games. That I think the intro, for all intents and purposes, lasts about 5 seconds before you're actually into the game.
Yep.
Are there weapon options, like stuff like from the gameplay that I'm seeing now? You're just using the same sword. Is there an option, like I know you did say before that you can pick one of the 3 weapons that you got offered at the start of the game, but like as you progress through the game, is there an option where you can have 10 weapons in your stack, an axe and different types of rapiers and like armors, different armors? Can you change your look of your characters? Is it like got that RPG sort of balance? Because what I'm saying now, it just seems to be you got one sword, one outfit, and that's about it. And
I'm not sure about the outfits. I don't think I've unlocked any at this point, but certainly the weapons you do, and your left arm has I guess a mechanic. You've basically got a mechanical left arm, is the easiest way to describe it, and that is probably the first one that you do have a number of options in that you can change that out. And then I think I've just unlocked one where it basically becomes almost like a hook shot. So you can shoot at an enemy, the lower level ones. It doesn't work with the bigger ones or the bosses, but you can certainly shoot it at the lower level enemies and pull them towards you. So you can either use that to pull one out of a group, or if you're up, I've used it a couple of times when you're walking around the rooftops. If you're walking, and a lot of the traversal between rooftops is just planks of wood across various rooftops. So if you can sort of maneuver yourself, drag one halfway across the wooden plank and then shoot the grappling hook out and grab them, it will actually just pull them straight off the rooftop.
Oh,
and
nice.
then down onto the ground and kill them that way. So you don't have to actually engage with them. And, that, as I said, though, the only problem is that only works with the lower level ones, which are obviously a lot easier to take out anyway. It doesn't work with the sort of mid-tier enemies and certainly not with the boss enemies either. So it's sort of limited. But again, whether that can be upgraded down the track, I'm certainly hoping so. And then we'll see how that goes. But even the level design itself, it's very much got that. You've got to go through this long section with heaps of enemies, and then you'll get to a point where you can unlock a shortcut back to, I think they're called stargazers in this, as opposed to bonfires or whatever it is.
I will forever call them bonfires.
But you do that. You go on this long winded tour. You fight all these enemies. You unlock a gate, and that leads you back to that first section you've got. So you're right back to where the last Stargazer point was, and very much that Soulsborne sort of game. And you see on screen now. So that's the first sort of main boss that you actually come up against, and he's quite difficult to start with. And his attack pattern, you sort of think you work it out, and then about halfway through, it changes completely, and he gets a lot more aggro towards you, so it makes it fairly difficult. But once you start using your dodges and that, and it's also got a perfect block as well. So if you're going to time that, it will actually stagger them, and if you do that enough, you'll get basically their health meter down the bottom will become white. Once it's white, and again, it's very difficult because they're not stunned, so you still have to work through it. But if you can do a charged heavy attack, it will basically drop them to the ground and completely stun them to the point where you can go in and do some, major damage on them as well. So heaps of different options in terms of your attack pattern. It's just, as I said, it's probably going to take a bit of getting used to, because it's similar but different enough to those other types of games where you really have to learn the mechanics of it. And then I'm sort of probably only scratching the surface, which may be the problem I'm encountering. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. It's a great setting. If you're into Soulsborne games, this will be right up your alley. And I think it's, from what I've seen, it's actually reviewing fairly well at this point. I think it's sitting at somewhere around 90 on Metacritic. So,
nice.
which is pretty higher than Starfield at the moment, which I find mildly surprising. But that's a topic for another day, I guess.
Yeah, I want to shout out this boss, the second phase that you mentioned. He pulls his own head off and starts using it as a weapon, which I thought was a very nice touch.
Is that in the Pinocchio lore? I can't remember the cartoon exactly, but the walrus, wasn't it the walrus that was kidnapping the kids?
Oh, no idea, man. Hard pass for me on that one.
If you were saying that's sort of tied in with that Pinocchio sort of lore style, are you seeing sort of elements of that sort of the whole premise of that story? Going to the Lost Boys Island and stuff.
I think it's a little bit, but what you find as you go through the town is that, and you don't see them, and certainly I haven't run into them as of yet, but there's, in essence, the enemies that control the town, I think, are human characters, and what they're sending out is all these puppets to attack and guard the town, and eventually they're the ones you end up fighting. So there's this whole thing about puppets and humans, and puppets are seen as lesser beings within the world. I think at one point that you get, after you fight this boss, you come to this hotel, which in essence becomes sort of a base of operations, is probably the best way to put it. When you knock on the door there, they say, well, no, there's no puppets allowed in here. Are you a puppet or are you a human? And then you've got to decide whether you say, no, I'm a puppet, or lie and say you're a human. And then I'm interested to see how that mechanic then plays out through the game, whether if you lie too much, that then affects elements within the game world. I know certainly with the Soulsborne games, depending on how you play it and how much you level up and those sort of things, it can very much change the mechanics in world while you're playing it and can make it either harder or more difficult for you. So I'd be interested to see if that would end up happening. If you tell the truth more often than not, it might make it easier. If you start lying your whole way through it, whether then the game world itself just becomes naturally harder because that's a side effect of it, I'm not sure, but certainly another interesting mechanic as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, man. Now, I'm yet to pass the parade master, but Bully, I'm hoping that you've lied yet. I want to know if your nose grows when you lie. Surely it does.
To be honest, I didn't. I was so excited to get past this bloke and into the the first main sort of area. I completely forgot to look, but which was funny because I think one of my kids come in while I was playing it and sort of go, "Oh, what's this?" And I said, "Oh, it's like a Pinocchio type game." "Oh, it doesn't look like Pinocchio, and he doesn't have a big nose. What are you talking about?" So I will have to go back and have a look and see if your nose actually does grow every time you lie.
I certainly hope it does. I'm going to go for the longest nose possible if that's the mechanic. I want to finish the game where you see my nose 5 feet before the rest of me enters the room.
Well, maybe that's a mechanic as well. If you tell enough lies, your nose grows long enough that you can sort of use it to nudge enemies out of your way.
That might be your ranged attack.
Yeah.
I love it. I hope so. To second your calls, man, I'm absolutely loving my time with it. It's just school holidays and I haven't had enough time as I'd like to put into it, but absolutely loving the mechanics. It does have its own little unique twist and I'm nowhere near mastering it yet, but you can feel it sort of nibbling around the edges of the dodge and the parry. I think the penalty for hitting X when it's empty takes too long, like that animation of, oh, hold on, I'm going for the empty thing. I've gotten absolutely destroyed by that boss so many times by hitting X when it was empty and that sort of staggered animation that you trigger. So I've got to get better at that. I'm a big fan of the way you're fighting robots everywhere and instead of blood, it's oil. You just get covered in black oil. I think that's a really nice change to the Bloodborne mechanics, but really well designed. I love the intricate levels like all the other Soulsborne, they fold back in and under themselves and the shortcuts. Thoroughly enjoyable. They've got the boxes that you can drop roll through. I'm a big fan of that mechanic, and they've nailed that one. I dig the way they've put the vendor right in front of that first boss fight. I don't know if they hold that through the whole game, but I think that's brilliant, putting the vendor right there before the boss fight. And on top of that, when you die in the boss fight, you don't have to go into the boss fight to collect your souls again. They're sort of on the outside of the door, so you can just run up, grab your souls, and go back to the vendor if you want to buy some more healing items or bombs or whatnot. So I like a few of their changes.
You're Ergo.
Ergo?
Ergo. It's not souls.
Oh, my apologies. But no, I'm loving it. I can definitely see me trying to put in the time to finish it. Fantastic game. I absolutely love it. And yeah, to your point, Ace, I hope that there are a lot more cosmetic changes. I'm not a big fan of his pirate shirt.
Yeah, some of these games like this, you just need a visual update every now and then just to keep you interested. Because if you're just watching the same thing over and over, and if this is an 8 to 10, 12-hour game, it can get visually frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ace, I take it you haven't gone hands-on with it, mate?
Look, this is you actually. This is the first time I've ever heard of it. So, but listening to your stories and sort of the premise of it and the lore of it is like interesting enough to tweak my interest, but probably only to the point where I'll probably watch a few videos on YouTube on people finishing it and seeing sort of what the story outcomes are either, because those Dark Souls, Demon Soul games where they punish you for making slight mistakes. You know what? Yeah. Like we're talking about the next game that's coming up next, you don't get too many of those punishments for playing a video game.
Yeah, that's very true. Speaking of the next game, let's move right along, shall we? Game 2. Over to you, Ace, for some NBA 2K Playgrounds 2.
Yeah, look, this definitely sort of in the child and might not be the newest of games coming out, but it's something that I've played before on the PlayStation. It was my young bloke's 7th birthday and he wanted a basketball game. He said he wanted 2K, and I said probably the actual 2K was a little bit too grown up and difficult in its game style. So I went out and got him this, and he's thoroughly enjoying it. And it's sort of it's even revamped my enjoyment of the game, sort of being able to play something with him that he can sort of match me in skill level. Not that he's beaten me yet. I've smacked him every time. And that's how it always will be. But look, it just comes from that sort of NBA Jam sort of lore. But, it's got those 2K money grab options in there. a lot of them in the sense of buying cards, packs of cards here. So you can either buy an in-game currency or you can earn it via playing the game. And with that, you can buy packs of cards, which then unlock players. But when you've got a young child who doesn't sort of see that, they're more than happy just to push in the hours. So, well, I was pretty proud of him the other day. He saved up 25,000 basketballs, and with that, he was able to buy himself Michael Jordan, who he seems to think is the GOAT. But I'm a LeBron man, so me and him will butt heads on that one for a while. But look, very easy game style, just up and down, 2v2. They've got a 3-point contest that you can play, and they've also got a season, which you unlock a special card. But yeah, we're just really enjoying sort of upgrading our characters, increasing our team. And if you're out there and you've got a son who loves sports and you want to get into a sports game that's not too difficult and that's pretty easy to master, this is definitely something that I'd be putting on the wish list. Because unlike your sort of your FIFAs and your 2Ks and your Maddens and your AFL Evolutions and stuff like that, which can be quite difficult in mastering, this is very easy. It's just steal, run, shoot, and that's about it, and block.
Do they have any of the sort of more high-end, thumbstick shooting, or is it just button shooting?
No, just all button shooting. It's very, very simple. It's a very easy game to play, very easy game to master. So, I had my nephews around here the other day as well. So we had my 2 nephews and me and my son playing. I smacked them all again, but that's just how it is. If you want to come into my house, and you got to pay the piper. So that was great. But yeah, look, it's great. Like even the character designs, like they all look a little bit silly, but that sort of adds to the comical relief. This is very much a kids style game with adults. Enough information and gameplay in there to keep adults interested. But unlocking players like Michael Jordan, unlock Shaquille O'Neal today, LeBron James, and then there's an upgrading mechanic where they start at bronze and you can get them up to diamond through challenges in game, whether it be shoot 10 jump shots inside the arc, get 2 blocks, that sort of stuff. So there's even that sort of level to it where you sort of step back, all right, I'm going to play this game, but I'm not going to shoot threes because I need to get 5 dunks on this character, or I need to block 3 shots with this character, and then they'll upgrade their stats even more and make it easier to play. Thoroughly enjoy it. As far as kids sports games goes, it's right up there with me. 2K always do a great job.
Yeah. Have you played much of the single player campaign? And if so, what's the difficulty like?
So the single player campaign in this sense is a season. There is an online underground mode, which I haven't sort of gone hands on with. We're having a bit of an issue, I think, because I logged on with my PlayStation account. It's not letting me link it with my Switch account, but either, because the email address is the same email address. But so I haven't got hands on with that. But the season's pretty easy. They actually give you 5 difficulties. So with my kid, with my oldest boy, we just went on the easiest, and where I think we've only lost the first game for the year, and we've won every game since.
Oh, nice. So is it co-op campaign? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you can play a co-op campaign, single player campaign, and then they've got online options as well. But look, yeah, if you're into basketball or sports like this is a great introduction. If you're trying to get your children into basketball, it's a great introduction because as we're going along, I'm sort of teaching them players. I know I unlocked Alonzo Mourning just before, and who did my son keep calling him? Kept calling him, I think it was Shaquille O'Neal. I said, no, mate, that's Alonzo Mourning, and he just refused to call him Alonzo Mourning. He goes, just let me call him Shaquille O'Neal. I said, okay, mate. But yeah, look, the graphic design's good enough. This game ain't jumping off the board. There's court design, there's character design. You can dress them up in funky clothes if you go and spend your basketballs on outfits. So there's enough to sort of keep people interested, and I know my son's well and truly hooked, so I'm quite enjoying that aspect of it.
Perfect, man. Sounds good. Final question from me. It's on PlayStation, I think you said. So how's the trophy list?
I haven't looked deep into the trophy list on the PlayStation. I'm not a hunter like you blokes because I'm just in there for the good time. I don't need to show off my wares.
What's better than earning a platinum?
We'll be winning the grand final this Saturday, Troy. But no, I haven't looked too much into it. But yeah, from my time with it on the PlayStation, it was very straightforward. Make 10 shots and you get a bronze trophy sort of thing.
Yeah, nice. No questions from my side, Bully. Any thoughts from you, mate?
No, I've played it on the Xbox, and I second that. It's NBA Jam was one of the greatest games of all time back in the 90s with the arcade, and then when it
wait, are you forgetting Basketball?
Basketball? Am I forgetting it? Yeah,
Greatest basketball game of all time, basketball. Come on, the old NES game.
No, NBA Jam. It's all about NBA Jam. And then when that finally came to home consoles, that was I think that was heaven for me as a teenager at that time, and having friends over and just sitting at home playing NBA Jam. I absolutely loved
Was
that.
that Super Nintendo?
Yeah, Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I remember the days. They were great.
And
you have like 5 or 6 people and you just rotate.
Yeah, and there's been a few iterations that they've tried to bring it back over the years. I think there was a 360 and PS3 version, which wasn't real crash hot, and this is probably as close as you're ever going to get back to it. Is it up to that same level? Maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't quite think so. But it's not far off, as you said, Ace. It's got everything there. It's got a bit of humour. It's got a bit of fun. It's got you make 3 shots and you're on fire, and
Yep.
and you've got the silly commentary in the background and all that sort of stuff. So it's probably as close as you're ever actually going to get to, an NBA Jam game in this current day and age. And I've really enjoyed playing it. It's one of those things there. The only thing I will say is, and you touched on it before with the cards or the upgrading, I think from memory, you can actually buy those as well. Is that
Yeah,
right?
there is a currency that you can buy. It's a classic 2K trope. If they can monetize anything, they will, and good on them. But I like the fact.
Look, I don't necessarily disagree. I think you see it in the NBA 2K game and those sort of things. My only thing is, in my opinion, this is probably sort of more aimed at kids and getting kids into a basketball game. So having those sort of mechanics in a game they might argue the toss and say it's not aimed at kids. I don't know, but I sort of see it that way as an introductory game for kids to be playing a basketball video game and to have those mechanics in there, even though you can play through them and earn them as you're playing. And I understand that, but just to have those mechanics in, I'm not real crash hot on, but that's probably the only downside for the game.
There is a definite apart from, so for $5,000, there's 3 tiers of packs of players that you can open. There's a $5,000 pack, which will get you 5,000 basketball pack, which will get your epics and your legendaries and your standards. And there's a $2,500 pack, which will get you maybe less of a chance of getting a legendary or epic character. And then there's like a $1,000 pack. And one thing I have noticed is that same endorphin excitement rush with the children when we unlocked LeBron James the other day through a pack of cards, and you could see it, like it just gets the hooks in. And I was a little bit the same as you, as much as I kind of enjoy it and the endorphins rush of it. It's much like pushing a pokies machine and getting the jackpot. You can see those sort of little early onsets coming on with children. They open a pack and they get 5 dud cards, and they open a pack and they get 2 legendary cards. Oh, we got such and such, and we got that. And just like, yeah, guys, come on, like, should we be aiming this stuff at children?
I've got no issue with saving up your basketballs or your in-game currency. If they then you can go to the shop and you can, they might say, LeBron's 50,000 basketballs. You save up 50,000 basketballs, you can buy him. Your lesser players, Alonzo Mourning, you mentioned before, he might be 10,000. So you save up 10,000 to buy him. I've got no issue with that. I think it's just, as you said, that loot box style mechanic that they're driving into kids early on and getting that rush out of it. I just don't think, not real keen on.
Yeah, I was impressed that my son had because I definitely didn't. I was trying to get him to spend his 20,000 basketballs when Jordan was 25, and I was like, "Come on, mate, let's just buy 4 packs." He's like, "No, Dad, we're saving up 25," and I was like, hats off to you. You're a better kid than I am.
Perfect. Well, if that's it for NBA 2K Playground 2, let's move on to Sniper Elite 5 and the recently released DLC, which name is I'm blanking on. Kraken Awakens, mission. Now you can see it here starting off with the massive sniper shot. I absolutely love it. But the whole mission here, Bully, is going into and destroying this aircraft carrier that the Nazis are building. And I'm going to say this is the biggest, most intricate level I've seen in any Sniper Elite game. I absolutely love it. They've got the entire docks sorted out. There's the massive, the aircraft carrier. Yeah, the aircraft carrier, that's the main objective to blow that up. But then you've got, sub objectives of taking out there's 3 submarines, and then you've got to get some recon photos and stuff. Massive, massive map. So many different routes you can take to get in there to get your the various objectives completed. It's an absolute fun stealth action shooter. Big thumbs up. And this one just came out. This is the final DLC, sorry, I should say, of the season 2. And it just came out in July this year. So it's relatively new. It's the first time I was playing it today, but hats off to them. It's the best looking and new type of environment I've seen them do. A lot of ins, a lot of outs, new weapons, of course, a couple of new weapon skins, but a fantastic excuse just to go back into Sniper Elite 5. Bully, is it still installed on your system?
No, I think I've had to take it off because it was taking up quite a bit of room. And, you've thrown in Starfield, Lies of P.
Yep.
What was the other one? There's another one that came out that I've installed. So I'm starting to really run out of room and have to be really selective. I haven't gone and got the expansion storage slot yet. I've only got an old USB hard drive hooked up to it, which you can't play
real
most
slow.
of the, yeah, well, you can't play. It won't even let you load most of the games on it. It says you have to install it over to the hard drive. So
Yep.
I think at some point I'll have to get that expansion slot and reinstall some of these games and get back into them.
Yeah, nice, man. I love all the other games I've been playing, but I've got to have a shooter on hand at all times when I feel like it. And I got to say, Sniper Elite 5, it's been my perfect palate cleanser when I'm stepping away from Starfield, Baldur's Gate, the other games I've been playing. I absolutely love this game, and I reckon this is their best map to date. It's the most fun I think you're going to have in Sniper Elite 5. And, of course, the big long-range testicle shot with the slow-mo explosion is still a thing of beauty. There's one of the subs going now. But if you're into Sniper Elite, definitely check out that recent release DLC map. It is my favorite map to date.
This was on the PlayStation Store just recently as well.
Yeah,
so
the base game. Yep.
Yeah, so I've been interested to get my hands on this because, like you said, some of those slow-mo animation shots, skulls exploding, look pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. If you haven't gone hands-on, definitely do it. Yeah, I think it was included. Is it, Bully, you might be able to correct me on this. I'm not sure if it was in like the deluxe tier or whether it was one of the, included in the just the base tier of Plus a few months ago, maybe.
I think it's the deluxe tier on, like, it's fully available. It's not a monthly update. It's there. It's sitting there for you.
Well, I highly encourage you to check it out, Ace. I'm a big fan of this game. It's sort of halfway between Call of Duty and Hitman. It's a very nice blend of the two. Oh, and the final boss is hiding in a cabin. He's like locked into his cabin. No spoilers, but there's 3 different ways to solve it. And I absolutely love the options they give you and giving you that choice of how to get that end boss. Because typically, as you know, Bully, they, have them walking around on a parade route and you can be sitting somewhere and just pick them off from long range. As far as I've seen in this one, that's not the case. It's the first time they're sort of forcing you up close and personal, but a very enjoyable, very, very enjoyable game. This brings us on to you, Bully, for game 4, Planet of Lana, is it?
Planet of Lana. So it was, I'm not sure where I picked it up. Probably about 3 or 4 days ago. It is a Game Pass game, and it's been there, I think, for a month or two. But I was reading something the other day and came across this and was highly recommended. I think it's sitting somewhere about the high 80s or maybe even up to 90 on Metacritic. And I thought, okay, well, for some reason, I just want a smaller game just to play through and have a break. And I think this one's about 4 or 5 hours long. So I thought, I'll jump into it and have a look. The first thing you can see on screen is the art style, and it's probably a bit hard to see with the footage on the screen there, but certainly the further you get into it, you can see a little bit with the trees and the sky in the background. It looks like a moving watercolor painting in the background in terms of an art
Monkey
style.
Island look to it?
A little bit, but probably less, I guess probably less animation and more, it literally looks like you're in a painting. And the further you get into it, so you're in that first this is like the town that you sort of start in, and once you're sort of out of this area and it becomes a bit more open and you see a bit more you've got more of the trees and the sky in the background and all that sort of stuff, you can really start to take it in then. But it's a side-scrolling platform puzzler, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. So it does have enemies in it, but you don't fight them. You've got this you've sort of got to traverse through this world. You have this little, I think it's called Maui or Mui or something like that, is the character that you go with. you're on this strange planet. So I guess he's not an actual creature you'd find. He's probably best described as a monkey or something like that. But he can help you because he can actually jump a lot higher than you can. So you can direct him up to ledges to drop things down for you to climb, but he has limitations as well. So he can't go through water and stuff like that. So you've got to work out how to get him across water and that sort of stuff. And there is, as I said, there is enemies in it, but you don't fight them. You've just sort of got to sneak past them. But it's not as simple as just hiding in the grass and waiting for it to go past and then moving on. It'll be in a almost like a set scene that you got to sort of work through. And the more you get into it, the more you play. It's not just a matter of trying to work around it and move on. You've got to use MUI to trigger a switch or distract them, or do something along those lines to either take them out or to try and get around it. But I've really enjoyed it. Just a bit of a break from some of the big games that I've been playing lately. It's certainly the puzzling itself isn't exceptionally difficult. It does make you think occasionally, but it's not. I haven't got to any in the first, and I played about 3.5, 4 hours. I haven't got into any puzzles that I've had to go away and look up a solution for. It's some of them you sort of sit there and go, oh, how do we do this? And you might try a different couple of things, and then you go, oh, okay, this is how we do it, and you work it out. So I've really enjoyed it. As I said, it's on Game Pass. I'm not sure about on PlayStation, whether it's on any of the paid services there, but certainly I'm enjoying it. It's a good little break from some of the big games we've been playing, and it looks and plays fantastic. And certainly from what I've seen so far, is justifying that high Metacritic rating.
I've put about 30 minutes, into a bully. And first I'll note here, because we just saw it on screen there's an achievement for passing the introduction. What's the introduction? Maybe 10 minutes, if you're lucky, until the title screen comes up. I thought it fascinating that only 65% of players have seen the first 10 minutes of the game. Like, that's only a 65% completion rate for that trophy, which struck me as odd. My question to you, Billy, is did this remind you of the old PC game Another World? I know it was released on other consoles recently, but that was exactly where my head went when I started playing this.
Yeah, look, a little bit. It certainly plays a lot more fluidly than
that. Definitely.
If I recall correctly, that was very stunted sort of movement. But it's not. It wouldn't be too dissimilar. It's funny when you mention about the first 10 or 15 minutes, and there's only 65% of people that have got and gone through it. I know that's been, and you can make arguments either way with it. So. And I know I had fallen into the trap with a lot of games, especially on Game Pass, when you've got this big selection to look through and play through, and you go, oh, okay, I'll load that. Looks okay. I'll load it up. You spend a couple of minutes with it, and you go, no, I'm just not really vibing with this, and just basically cut right out of it.
Yep.
And you wouldn't get to that 10 or 15 minutes because you just think, no, it's not gelling with me straight away. There's all these other games on Game Pass. I'll just go and play something else. But what I've learned with especially with Game Pass, and to a lesser extent some of the offerings on PlayStation through their premium and extra tiers, is I've forced myself with these types of games to put in an hour and a half and then make a judgment at that point. And what I've found out of that is I've played some really fantastic indie and smaller type games on Game Pass that if I had have just jumped into it and given it a couple of minutes, I most certainly would have gone, nah, and backed out of it. But giving it that extra time just to let it play out. And there's a couple I can think of. I think it was Grimlock that was that Alice in Wonderland style game that was out about 5 or 6 months ago on Game Pass. There was another one that I played recently, and the name of it escapes me, but another smaller indie type game that I ended up really enjoying. It was a 5 or 6 hour experience, smaller experience. It was really good gameplay and fun to play. But I guess the point of all that is if you're going to, and I get it's easy just to jump from game to game to game until you find something you want. But my advice would be to give these smaller games, a good decent amount of time to actually let it soak in, see what the gameplay is like, how it actually plays out, and then make a decision after that before immediately jumping out of it. Because you'd be surprised at some of the high quality stuff that is out there that you may just miss for whatever reason.
Yeah, very good. And obviously, there's some platforming challenges, so I'm struggling. I'm not sure I'm going to go back to this one. But I take your points. Ace, any further comments from you, mate, or shall we chug along?
It's got like little sprinkles of Prince of Persia, sort of.
Yeah, that's a fair call.
Yeah, I was sort of watching the sort of the movement, but I could see why people probably get turned off. Combat probably being a pretty big decider thing in games these days. Everyone wants that sort of high intensity action sort of style. So I can imagine if people coming in and they see the first boss and they go, "How do I hit him? How do I hit him? I can't hit him. Bugger this," and they'll just move on pretty quickly. So look, it's probably a hard pass for me, but look, I'd be more interested to see sort of hearing your stories and your progression and how you go with it.
Nice one, mate. All right, Ace, keep that mic nice and close, mate, as we go on to game 5, which is your experience with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, I was on a couple of weeks ago and sort of said, I think it was just after my birthday that I finally got my hands on this. So I think I was waiting for the right time, for the right price, and really just have not been disappointed by this game. And I know you guys have talked about it a bunch, but I'm just here to give you my 2 cents. And I was having a chat with Bully before the show. And then whichever way you want to count it up, but with the Zoras now, I just finished that world, and I won't give any spoilers, but just I really love Breath of the Wild, and and that was one of those games that I thought was a true 10 out of 10. And this is going back to a sort of Ocarina of Time. I've really enjoyed everything the Nintendo have done with these games, and they've just stepped it up again. Just when you thought that they couldn't. I just love the freedom that they give you, and I think I said last time, once you get over that mindset that the game isn't going to tell you where to go exactly. Like, it will give you hints and it'll give you sort of point you in a direction, but they really leave the game style and the play up to you. And I started with Rito Village. I moved to Death Mountain and onto the Zora Town after that. And I believe that was probably the correct approach, because there's just sort of certain aspects that you get sort of bonus abilities from each village that you will call, say, Liberate. And definitely, if you go to Rito Village first, you get a skill that sort of helps you fly a little bit faster and a little bit quicker, and that seems to be that's really helped me sort of push along. I imagine if I sort of went any other direction, then I probably would have struggled a little bit. But look, I just really thoroughly enjoy it, the gameplay style, the mechanics, and like we touched on before, Bully, in the game style, the building mechanic, and some of the stuff that you can come up with is just crazy. And like, this is not a next gen high intensity, 1080p game. The fact that they can put so much in a game that's, on a tiny little SSD card, effectively the same size of, and such great game mechanics. Like, you're sort of looking at some of these other games that are coming out, which just all seem to be mirror carbon copies of each other. But these guys Nintendo aren't too afraid to sort of take a step off the norm and deliver something new. And I think if this doesn't get Game of the Year, this was this year. If this doesn't get Game of the Year, I think everyone will be crazy, because just some of the stuff that they do is very exciting and new.
So if Breath of the Wild was a 10 and this is better, am I hearing that this is the first ever 11 on the Gaming Enforcement Agency?
Yes, look, unfortunately, everything only really gets measured on its own merit. So if 10 is the highest, then this is also just a 10. And it's not to take anything off of Breath of the Wild. At the time, Breath of the Wild was a 10, and moving forward, and now where we are now with the advancements in technologies, this is also just a 10. And look, as we move back, if Breath of the Wild came out now and side by side with this, maybe give Breath of the Wild an 8, because this would be a 10. But for the time, it was a great game. But this is just next level. And finally, I think you gave me the tip on that Tears of the Kingdom Wikipedia page. Which
shout out to Map Genie. It's mapgenie.io is the website.
Yep. Map Genie, thank you very much. Just that, I think I'd said to Troy, sort of, I was a little bit lost and I was looking for some things, and so Troy goes, "Get on this Map Genie," and he sent me the link, and I jumped on that, and goddamn, that helps a lot too, when you could just type in, "I need this," and it just shows you the map and it shows you exactly where to go. Which really helped me with what would you call them, the shrines, because I was trying to get my stamina up so that I could unlock the Master Sword. So I was able to punch through and get those shrines and then get the Master Sword, and pretty early on in the game. And I've been enjoying it ever since.
Yeah, I absolutely love Map Genie. Any open world type game with collectibles, Map Genie has probably covered it, but I love it. Bully, have you gone hands back on with Tears of the Kingdom, or is it sitting on your shelf?
No, it's still sitting on the shelf. I did mention to Ace before we started the show. I think I was trying to recall what game sort of took me away from it. And I think it was Final Fantasy, and
S16, yep.
yeah, Final Fantasy 16, and I think that sort of marked a bit of a change for me in how I play games. That rather than just sort of moving on, playing it for a week or two, and then just the next big thing, almost like a 2-year-old child. Here's the next big shiny thing over here. I'm going to go and play that. I've really made a concerted effort over the last probably 4 or 5 months to go. No, well, I want to start a game and see it through. And so far I've been doing that. I mean, I've finished Final Fantasy 16, finished Tales of Arise, finished Sea of Stars, and then want to get I've been getting right into Starfield as well. So. I'm not sure if how we'll go with Starfield, because my understanding is that basically the end of the game and into New Game Plus is really halfway through the game. So without giving any story spoilers away, so there might be a massive time sink in that. And then I think what have I got? 5 days left before I'm away for a month. So there won't be a lot of gaming being done over that 3 or 4 week period. So I'll have a lot to catch up on when I get back. So this theory of playing through these games might not last long. So
is that to say you're not taking your Switch and playing Tears of the Kingdom on the plane, mate?
Good time. It'll be a good time.
Yes, and I imagine my 3 children will also imagine it's a good time. So Daddy might be sitting there staring at the back of his eyelids, I think.
I'll give my son's review on Tears of the Kingdom, because
beautiful, I love it.
He saw me playing it and he thought, I want to get my hands on this, and he likes the idea of running around swinging with the sword. And as much as the game style, the art style sort of would encourage, like, it's the sort of thing that a child goes, yeah, I want to play that. It's very much not a kid's game, and this is one of the things that sort of throws me off, because people come around to my house and, what's this game you're playing? What's this for game for children? I'm like, you don't understand. There's shrines and there's a lot of, like, you got to work things out. It's quite difficult, so you've got to be a little bit patient. So it's sort of one of those things that sort of, that art style sort of throws you off, but it's very much like an adult's game, I guess I would call it. Maybe it's like a 16 plus, sort of 18 plus, because you need some patience and you need to be able to sort of work things out and nut things out. And that's one of the big things that I really enjoy in it. Just those, it's not just all about going in there swinging swords and stuff. Sometimes you got to think your way through the next puzzle or build something that's going to get you from point A to point B, and you only got a certain amount of things around you. So yeah, it's a great game, and if you haven't played it, I imagine most people have. But if you haven't. Oh, I know you're aware, Wade. We keep talking to your boy at baseball. I'm like, hey, you've got a bit of EB money. Maybe you should go and spend that for Dad. But I did promise you, once I've knocked it off, I'll lend you my copy.
Very good, mate. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's move on then to the final game this evening. Over to you, Bully, for Party Animals.
Yeah, just a quick one. So it dropped onto Xbox Game Pass just today. So I jumped in and had a bit of a play of it. I think it's one of those games. It's a physics party game, I think is what they call it. So that you
Fall Guys,
similar to that, but more difficult in terms of the maneuverability of your character. So you can see on screen there where I'm playing. So basically, difficult to move your character around. This particular one is the mini games. You're on ice and you've got to. You can see how well I go to start with, because I just turn into an ice block and drown within 3 seconds of the game starting. But this one, you got to sort of maintain your spot on the ice, and then it slowly becomes smaller and smaller. You've got attacks that you can punch, kick, headbutt, do drop kicks, and various attacks to try and knock other players off. They drop weapons into the arena as well to try and knock them off. But mechanically speaking, I found it really strange. There'll be some times where you'll land one punch, and for some reason, either you're knocked out or they're knocked out, and you're lying on the ground, sort of prone, and someone can just pick you up and throw you off the edge. And there's other times where you'll hit some character 5, 6, 7 times, and they're just still standing, and you're going, well, there's no rhyme or reason behind it. There's different mini games, like there's this one here that you can see here. I played through one where there's basically a soccer goal that you split up into 2 teams and you've got to score goals. There's another one where you've got trebuchet on each side of a river that you've got to load with explosives and then fire it onto the other side of the river to blow up the opposing team. So there's different games in there, but
Nice.
you know, maybe it's one for young kids to play. I don't know, but certainly I put a bit of air into it just before we came on air, and that's probably about the extent of the time I'll be spending with it. It'll be. I was mildly interested in it, mildly excited about it because it looked like a fun little party game, but just the mechanics of it and the movement is really not something for me. I think it's supposed to have a bit of humour in it and a bit of zaniness and wackiness to it, but it just doesn't translate well, in my opinion, to good control and good fun, fair gameplay. If you're going to have a party game, my opinion is it's got to be relatively fair, and it just doesn't seem like it is.
It sounds like, and it looks a little bit like, it's reminding me of Gang Beasts. Have you gone hands on with that one, Bully? Also in Game Pass?
No, I haven't. I
want to say that one's like a 2015 game. It's quite dated now, but it's similar into how you describe the movement and a bit of the sort of crazy physics that don't always make sense. But my boys love Gang Beasts. They put so many hours into it, so I'm stoked that this is in Game Pass. I can see my boys being all about this one. I'm very excited to put this in their hands. My first question, is there an offline mode or is it only ever online multiplayer?
I believe it's just online only. So there's a tutorial section which I think is only going to be, which will be offline, but that literally just gives you the basics of the game, and then that's it. It takes probably 2 or 3 minutes to play through, and that's the extent of the tutorial. Otherwise, it's, from what I can see, it's online only.
Yeah, right. And a split screen local co-op type, or is it single player only?
I'm not sure. Didn't really get into the options part of it as much. I just sort of, thought I'd just jump into it and quickly bash through a few games. So I'm not quite really sure on the options available in that respect. I'd be surprised if it didn't have a split screen, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Very good. Well, keep your eyes on the channel. I reckon there's every chance I'll be covering this one with my young lads over the next couple of days. Ace, any thoughts from you on party animals?
Well, maybe I'll have to bring my eldest around to your joint and we can let him battle it out with your two.
Yep.
And we'll see how they go. And we could just sit back and have a few cans and laugh at the mayhem that this game looks like it would cause.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, but we'll leave it to that one. But yeah, by the sound of things, it's not going to be something I'm going to pick up.
Very good. All right, fellas, let's take a small active reload, and then we'll be back with the news segment. When I can find a button, active reload should be right Welcome back, Bully. Who has the right to remain newsworthy first this evening?
Well, the first one, a bit of a leaked document from Xbox that we see, a document that was drawn up in 2020, so very early on in the COVID sort of environment, which may impact what we're about to talk about in some of the releases, but some of the releases that we saw, which haven't been announced, but would tickle the taste buds, certainly of me, is that they're looking at remasters of uh, Elder Scrolls, so Oblivion, as well as Fallout, and then a couple of titles which there isn't much info on of called Project Kestrel and Project Platinum, and then Indiana Jones, which we do know about, but indicated that that will be a trilogy of games for the Indiana Jones story there. So a bit of interesting thing. So as I said, none of it's actually been released, and I think there was some discussion that they may be looking at a 2024 release initially, but as I mentioned at the start, with the plans being drawn up during the early days of COVID, that might push some of those back. But interesting release there amongst a number of other things, which I think have come out over the last couple of days as well. So I think there was some discussion about an interest from Xbox looking at buying Nintendo again. Which has reared its head. I know, if you go back to the days of the original Xbox, that was born out of Microsoft's attempt at buying Nintendo back in the late 90s, early 2000s, which didn't end up eventuating, and they went away and made their own console as a result of it. So, which is quite funny because Nintendo's actually spurned their two major rivals because of their business interactions. Obviously, the famous one being the collaboration with Sony to put a CD or DVD drive onto the SNES console, which fell through at the very last minute. So Sony, being the spurned lover, went away and decided we can do it better anyway, and hence we now have the PlayStation line of consoles. But certainly very interesting, and I'm excited if we do get releases or remasters of Oblivion and Fallout 3, because they're some of the all-time classics in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, man. First thing, Billy, can I get you just a bit close to that mic, mate? I reckon you might just be a little off it. But secondly, I'm not sure if it was this story or sort of as you alluded to, and as I've read and understood, Microsoft themselves were uploading documents to the FTC site in the wrong fashion, and that's why they've all become public, and now everyone's digging through them. And I'm not sure if it was in this one or another one, but in one of the documents, they're talking about Ghostwire Tokyo 2, but after its poor reception and poor sales, I think that game's probably been scrapped. So I think a lot of this, and you sort of already alluded to it, mate, but a lot of this is so tentative. I would agree 100% this is what they were planning a couple of years ago, but I don't know, with how a couple of the recent releases have gone, Redfall and stuff, like they might have reined in a lot of these expectations, I think. And jumping to my mind first is Indiana Jones. Like, surely that's a release one and see how it goes before they commit to making 3 of them. Unless, of course, they're just doing remakes of the films, in which case, yes, just do the first 3 films.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, the other thing to look at as well is that when you talk about the remasters of Oblivion and Fallout 3, they're the base, first real big time games that we saw, AAA titles we saw out of Bethesda and ZeniMax Studios. So, given that the reception for Starfield has been pretty good, and I think I saw today that there was, it's up over 10 million players have jumped in and played it. So it might reignite some of that interest in some of their earlier games, because certainly prior to Starfield, and we can all forget about Fallout 76, but their last sort of real mainline game prior to Starfield was back in 2014 with Fallout 4. So there's been almost an entire generation of players that wouldn't have experienced a lot of those earlier Bethesda games that still, in my opinion, have a lot of charm and a lot of replayability. And if you're going to remake them or remaster them, however you're going to end up doing it, and bring them up to being available for new gen, and by the time they come out, we'd be looking at somewhere in the region of 20 years since those games came out. I certainly think it's worthwhile, and as I said, given the interest in the studio now with the release of Starfield, I think probably not a bad time to go and re-release those in some some fashion.
Yeah, definitely. I remember a story from a few weeks back. There was details that come out that the Oblivion port was Unreal Engine 5, for the look and feel of the game, but then it was still the same RPG engine essentially under it. So it'll be the same game as we remember, but looking and playing a lot smoother, which is exciting. I can't wait to go hands back on with Oblivion. And yes, I would take a Fallout 3. I didn't see it anywhere, Bully, but hopefully Fallout New Vegas is also get a touch up.
Well, it'll be interesting with that one because that is
Obsidian.
That's not Bethesda, that's Obsidian. So it'd be interesting to see whether that's thrown into the mix as well.
I believe Bethesda own it though. Like Obsidian made it, but I believe
As in the rights
Bethesda.
to it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it would be
yeah.
their call as to whether it got remade. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it does.
Yeah.
You guys aren't excited about an the new Indiana Jones, the lady version being the main character of the games?
Move on.
Nah, yeah, hard pass. All right. Speaking of leading ladies, though, Ace, I like what you did there. Second story this evening, Bully.
Well, coming out of the Nintendo Direct, so I think we touched on it in last week's show that there was a Nintendo Direct and a PlayStation State of Play that dropped the day after we did last week's show. So a couple of items come out of that I've thrown in here that sort of piqued my interest was the first one being that Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 have been, or the trilogy has been announced for the Nintendo Switch. It's since come out that they're coming basically to all the consoles, PlayStations, Xbox, and PC as well. But it initially did really pique my interest. I've always wanted to go back to the original Tomb Raider games, but they, just the way they look and play, we're looking at the mid to late 90s. They certainly don't really hold up in any way, shape, or form today. But my only concern is the more that I've sort of seen about this and some of what's up in the air is to how much they're actually going to go back and remaster it. It's not so much the visuals, you can sort of look sideways a little bit with that, but the mechanics and the actual gameplay and the movement of Lara Croft in these games, I think, if you were just to basically port them across, just wouldn't stack up in any way, shape, or form. So it'd be interesting to see how much they actually go back and try and tweak some of those mechanics, or whether, in fact, because I don't think they revealed who was actually responsible for making the game or making the remake trilogy, whether they can use some of the Crystal Dynamics assets to. I'd be even happy with that with the new trilogy of Tomb Raider games if they use those mechanics and assets and that sort of stuff and redid the original games in that form. I think would be more than acceptable. But certainly, I'd be really keen to see how this looks and also got a release date, funnily enough, as well. So February 14 next year, so not too far away for that. So hopefully we will see some more gameplay and we will see how it's going to stack up a bit closer to release date in the next couple of months.
February 14, is that Valentine's Day?
Well, don't tell my wife this, but Clara Cross
she's getting it
for a long while.
Do you reckon they might, just with everything, the way the world's moving, maybe pull a bit of a Swifty and recast Lara Croft as a man?
Not
going to happen.
No.
Look, I
Voiced
think
by Nolan North.
Yeah. I think the latest Tomb Raider trilogy is grossly underrated. Sort of,
they were top-notch games.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed them. I loved the gameplay style of it, the hunting, the weapon upgrade mechanics, and all that sort of stuff. And they sort of just, whenever you talk to anyone about games and stuff, everyone never mentions them. But what was the Naughty Dog game that I'm thinking about?
Uncharted?
Uncharted, where everyone raves about Uncharted. I was like, man, these games are just on par with Uncharted. But
they are.
Like you said, if they're just bringing this across, because I remember playing these games now and they're very clunky. If they were just to bring this across and go, here you go, here's a bit of nostalgia for you, it's going to fall on its ass. But if they can remaster it and take basically the storyline and put it with that new trilogy style gameplay and graphics, then this could possibly be a bit of a success.
I hear what you blokes are pitching, and I'm all for it. That sounds amazing to me. But looking at the screenshots and the trailer that came out for it, it's looking a lot more to me like the recent GoldenEye 007 port, where they didn't really touch it all. They visually bumped it up a little bit. The gameplay under the hood was very much the original, 20-year-old, 15-year-old game at this point. Did you get that vibe from the trailer at all, Bully, that it is going to be a beat-for-beat remake of the original, so clunky gameplay included?
Yeah, and I suppose that's what I mentioned before. That's my concern, really, is you can, as I said, you can almost look past the visuals and just accept it for what it is in terms of, basically 25 to 30-year-old franchise. But if they do nothing with the controls, I think they're heading for disaster with it, in my opinion, because, I think it's going back a couple of years ago now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I went back and tried to play the original Tomb Raider and played it for about 5 minutes. It is borderline unplayable, when compared to control schemes and mechanics, and even little things like I remember, when you because it's very heavily platform where you're jumping around and moving around the environment and jumping around and off ledges, that you had to really time that jump with the gated run that she had, and quite often you'd miss jumps because you had to jump or press the jump button as the animation for the character was entering into the final step, not as their foot hit the ground. You'd have to do it sort of as it was coming towards the ground. So if that was left in place, I'd be really concerned. And that being the case, nostalgia enough isn't going to get me on board, and it would be a hard pass unless they really fix the control scheme.
Yeah, I remember you always had to keep your eye out for the big boulders rolling in. Moving on to story 3, Bully.
Story 3. So another one out of the Nintendo Direct, and I picked this. There was a couple of surprises I think came out of that. I think we had the new Peach game and a couple of other titles, but certainly one that intrigued me was the remake of the Game Boy Advance title Mario v Donkey Kong. And
I never went hands-on with this, mate. If you've played it, tell me all about it, please.
I haven't, to be honest with you, but it was one of those, obviously the handheld, and after the original Game Boy, I really missed a lot of the handheld sort of stuff until I picked up a 3DS a couple of years ago and sort of had to retrack back through some of the DS catalog and the Game Boy Advance catalog. So I haven't gone hands-on with the original, but from what I saw with the gameplay, it looks really good. It looks tight. It looks like what we've come to expect out of Nintendo with the Switch console generation, and it's got some puzzle mechanics in there. It's got platforming mechanics in there, and it's all in one screen. It's very much sort of, I think, in the mold of the Treasure Tracker Toad game that they extracted out of the Wii Mario game and then made a game all of itself, where you basically have the entire level on one screen. You've got to maneuver your way around it, work out the puzzles. I really enjoyed that game, and this is probably right up my alley with that as well. I just love the visuals that go with it as well, and from what I've seen, I'm really keen for it.
Yeah, nice. I can tell you my boy's biggest excitement out of that Nintendo Direct was the port or remake, whatever you want to call it, HD remaster of Luigi's Mansion 2. My boys absolutely love number 3, and they are dying to go hands-on with number 2, so that's exciting as well. Was there anything there that grabbed your eye, Ace?
Look, any of these when they do these old school games and they report them and remaster them, as much as I like the member berries but getting squeezed a little bit, I want to really see like a new sort of game style, mechanics, graphics, fully upgraded, everything sort of. So if they're going to the point that they're making a new game and they're going to title it the same as an existing game, then yeah, it might be something that me and the young lads, as they sort of start to come into they're popping their gaming cherries, we might go hands on with it.
Very good. Sorry, Billy, was there anything from the tail of this story we haven't touched on, or shall we move on to 4?
Oh, not for this, but I suppose the other one, which we found out a couple of months ago, but certainly they gave us some more gameplay, which I'm immensely excited for come November, is the Mario RPG game as well. I can't wait for that one.
Yes, that looks great. All right, story 4 this evening.
Story 4, and releasing today, is the Resident Evil 4 remakes, which we saw earlier in the year. So the Separate Ways DLC out today, which has the alternate viewpoint of the story. So we saw Ada Wong that jumps in and out of the main story in various points, but we see a lot of the actual story and her version of events and her side of what was going on through the story that we you only sort of get little bits and pieces of. So we're getting that as DLC. And then also as part of that, we're getting an update for the mercenary section in the original game that also includes Ada, and it includes
Is there a new biome?
Albert Wesker. I don't know what a biome is. And then you've got Albert Wesker as well in the Mercenaries mode, so that'll give you some more playthrough and replay ability for that.
Question from me, Bully. Is this included? I paid the extra for the deluxe or whatever collector's edition to go hands on a few days early. Is this DLC included in that, or do I have to fork over more cash for this?
I'm not sure because I didn't get the. I think I just got the standard version, so I didn't really pay much attention to what the extra one included. But yeah, otherwise I'm not sure. I don't even think it's got a price on it. I think it might be about 30 odd US dollars. So what did that make it? About 40, 45 Australian dollars, I think.
Yeah, ouch. Well, I hope that was included in my initial purchase. And I absolutely love and I'm blanking on it now, Mercenaries mode, is it? That mode is fantastic. So to hear there's an expansion for that, sign me up. I can't wait. Ace,
well,
did you ever... sorry, go,
I was just going to say quickly, the actual expansion with the characters on the mercenary mode is a free part of the update. So you don't have to actually pay for that to get the new characters in. It's just the Separate Ways DLC for that added Ada Wong story.
I love it. Ace, you probably hard passed, did you, on the old Resident Evil 4?
You know how scary these games are, man. I was watching today on TikTok some Resident Evil snippet, and I don't know what the character was. He looks, I would imagine he's called the Butcher. There's a butchery room, and there's body bags hanging, and this character knocks you into this pit, and you've got a gun, and then the guy comes at you, and I see him, he shoots him in the head like 6 times, and his head explodes, and you're like, I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. And then his head reforms. He's like, you think I could die like that easy? I'm like, what the hell's going on? Then the next thing he's chasing the character around with like this chainsaw axe thing, and I'm like, I'm out, hard pass. Like, that stuff's just, whew. Anyway, next story.
Nice one. Sorry, just before we do, Bully, are you going to go hands-on with this, mate? Has it got your interest? Will it get your wallet open?
Oh, I think it will at some point. As I said, I've got 5 days before I exit the country for a little while, so I'm not sure I'll get to it before I do go, but it will be on the list to play at some point.
Very good. All right, then, story 5 this evening, please.
Story 5. So Xbox Game Pass titles that have been announced and upcoming for the next couple of weeks. We do have, which was a bit of a surprise there. So Party Animals, which I did talk about, which was released. We've got Payday 3, which is coming out tomorrow, and Cocoon, which I haven't really seen much about. But the big one that sort of crept up and out of nowhere was Gotham Knights is being thrown on to Game Pass, which I think received, in probably unfairly, in my opinion, some fairly lackluster reviews when it was released last year. But I certainly remember having discussions on the show about it with yourself and Unky last year. We were all pretty red hot on it and thought it was actually, yes, it had some deficiencies there, but and I think one of the major knocks was Ace as well. So I think one of the major knocks on it was the 30 frames per second, which does, frame rate doesn't really worry me. I know it does with Unky a little bit, and he still found it more than acceptable to play. So there's a lot of content in the game as well. So good to see that it's getting a second lease of life, and hopefully it gets some more interest in it and a bit more hype when, if people aren't having to shell out, full price for it, they can jump into it on Game Pass and have a bit of a crack at it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So that is coming out on October the 3rd. And then we've got Lamplighters League, which I haven't really seen much about, but certainly, we've got those, and that's on top of some great games that we've seen earlier. For this month, we spoke about Lies of P, and then obviously Starfield at the start of the month as well. So it's been a fairly solid month, in my opinion, for the Game Pass offerings.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a very strong quarter for it, especially if the Activision Blizzard merger goes through and then suddenly all the Call of Duties appear in Game Pass. It'll be a force to be reckoned with come Chrissy season. But yeah, if you haven't played Gotham Knights, as soon as it gets in there, I second Bully's points there. Definitely go hands on and give it a crack. Final question. Did they ever go back and patch it to 60 frames a second? I sort of stopped paying attention to the Gotham Knights, but I feel like it's been, 8 months or so? I'd be surprised if they haven't patched
Wasn't the original issues that they couldn't get it running on 60 frames a second with the untethered multiplayer aspect?
Is that the issue?
So I think they couldn't work that out. That was the last thing I heard. But it was an underrated game. The 4 different styles of gameplay that you could have, and like even the storyline was whole story was really
Yeah.
good, and like even the way that each character sort of behaved and acted and their moves and everything was really good. And I only sort of started dabbling in the multiplayer aspects of it, but yeah, I thought this was like a very well underrated game. And hats off to Microsoft, because I've never really regretted having a PlayStation, but with Starfield and this sort of things, I'm starting to regret it.
Come Christmas time, Ace, you'll
Yes,
come
yes,
across, I
yeah,
reckon.
yes.
We'll
I think
have you soon.
I'm coming. Don't worry.
I
Well,
love it.
I was just going to say the other thing, which is probably interesting from my point of view, is that it seems like Microsoft's really putting the foot down with some of their releases, given the backlash that we've seen in the last couple of weeks in relation to PlayStation Plus and their offerings in terms of jacking the price up quite substantially. But the monthly games that they released for September were poor, and that's probably putting it politely, to be honest. And even what we've seen out of some of the the quote unquote classics collection, where we're getting remakes of PSP games instead of the solid PS1 or PS2 offerings of the same name and same game. I think they've really dropped the ball, and it just seems to me that Microsoft's really seized on it and trying to put the foot on the throat with the subscription service thing, and seem to be doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
There was a time in my life I really looked forward to that the monthly game release, and time and time again, it never seems to be any single sort of even like a B level type game. It's always these subpar indie games, and hats off to those developers and stuff like that. But when you're paying for a service, and then on the flip side, you're watching Microsoft chuck this out. What was that? The game by the Rick and Morty people, stuff like
High
that.
on Life.
High on Life, and they're just giving it to you. They're just going, "Hey, come to us. We'll give you AAA titles." Like it seems to stink to me of just PlayStation feel like they've got a little bit of a monopoly, and so they can take advantage of the PlayStation users, where Xbox, Microsoft are sort of they're actually paying homage to their users and their thing. And it's like I've said to you a few times, Troy, I'll be getting an Xbox this Christmas this year, and not just for Starfield, but for this exact same reason, because they just seem to be giving you a little bit more bang for your buck.
Yeah, definitely the place to be gaming, except for the DualSense controller. We need an equivalent of that. It'd be nice.
Stand by.
Here we go, Bully. Next story, mate.
Next story, and I'm glad you mentioned it there, Troy, because another part of the Xbox leaks that we've had is the. I think we saw probably of lesser interest was a new mid-tier or mid-generation console, digital only Xbox Series X that they're looking to release, which looks like a sort of boombox speaker type thing. But as part of that, we also got a leak of a new controller for the Xbox, which we really haven't seen much of an upgrade. In essence, we're playing with essentially an Xbox 360 controller. It's been refined slightly, but certainly the options that are available for it are probably not much better than what we're getting on a 15 to 20-year-old console. But some of the things that have been noted in it as well is that we're looking at having a haptic feedback in the controls, so very much like what you've got with the PS5 controller, which would be that's probably the major difference for me with the games is that you don't have that haptic feedback. But we're certainly looking at having that and an accelerometer in the controller as well. Quieter buttons and thumbsticks. I know that's, and it might sound strange, but that's been a complaint of many people, is that the clicking of the actual buttons, the face buttons and the D-pad is actually quite loud on the Xbox.
It really
controller.
is, yeah.
Almost to the point where it can be somewhat, distracting while you're playing as well. So certainly, if they're able to make those a lot more smoother and less sort of clunky, that'd be fantastic as well. We're looking at rechargeable batteries in there as well. So for those that don't have an Xbox, it's still the primary way to use it is a couple of AA batteries in the back of it. You can buy recharge kits for it and a charging stand, but they're third-party offerings that Microsoft don't actually have themselves. So it'd be great to see that there's rechargeable batteries in there, and then a couple of other just sort of quality of life things in there as well. So a new Bluetooth update in there, some different thumbsticks, modular thumbsticks that you'll be able to basically pull in and pull out, change them and a couple of just ergonomic improvements with the controller as well. But I'm certainly, I'd be really keen to see it when it is released, and it'll probably be, for me, given those extras, especially with the haptic feedback, I think it would be almost a day one purchase for me, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely. Sign
I-
me up. I
can't-
noticed. Oh, sorry, go Ace.
I can't wait for you guys to get haptic feedback and be like in the first 5 minutes, go, well, that was nice, and turn it off like I did straight away. It is the biggest jargon thing in my life, and like
I love it.
when I was like click click, I'm like, no, I don't want this. Just take me back to the good old days.
I love it. I reckon it adds a whole lot to it. Especially, I know the one that's always thrown back to is the drawing a bow and arrow, but little things like that, I really don't mind. I think the only thing is that with some of the games, it actually takes a bit of effort to pull the trigger back on some games. That's the only drawback I've actually found.
I think it's a great gimmick. I'll have a look at this, but once you sort of get into like you boys know, I played a lot of DMZ, Modern Warfare. Once you sort of you get over that sort of little haha, that's pretty cool. You just like you just click it back or you turn it off pretty well straight away. So
A shout out though to Returnal. Did you ever go hands on with Returnal? Because that used that sort of 2-step trigger really well. It became a key part of the gameplay.
Man, it's one of those games that's on the deluxe PlayStation Store.
Yeah.
And I know it was like a very high score on like a 9.5 or something. And yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about that game, and I'm always like, there will be a day when I will get my hands on it, and so maybe that will be the day I'll switch haptics back on.
Yeah, nice one, man. I want to point out here on the controller at the top left there, it's got Play Anywhere, direct to cloud is noted. I wonder whether this controller started its life as, do you remember they've abandoned it since, but they were going to do like the little USB stick for the back of your tally just for Xbox Game Pass? And then you know how the Stadia controller didn't talk to the tally, it talked directly to the Stadia servers. I just wonder whether this was Microsoft using that exact idea for their little Fire Stick or whatever they were going to have, and then this controller maybe.
I can tell you, I connected a PS4 controller to my TV and played Xbox Live with that.
Yeah. Worked well?
Yeah, it worked fine.
Yeah, beautiful.
That was only for the high on life, so I don't know how it would go with the sort of other games, but
fair enough.
It might be one of those things though, because we've heard certain rumors over the last couple of years about Xbox in terms of their future thoughts and potentially ditching consoles manufacturing altogether, and then either using apps on smart TVs, or as you said, a Bluetooth stick or something of that nature that plugs into USB in the back of a TV or a PC or whatever it is, and basically just having their games thrown up on that, and either buying them or just basically having Game Pass like you have Netflix on a TV, and instead of using the TV remote, you just pull up an Xbox remote and just start playing it through that. I'm not sure if they're just sort of hedging their bets with that, or whether they potentially are looking at going full throttle. Although I think with one of those leaks that we saw as well is that they're planning for the Xbox Series replacement to be around the 2028. So maybe they're not entirely ditching it altogether.
A little plug-in SSD drive, perhaps.
Oh, nice. All right, the final story this evening, Billy.
Yeah, so a little bit of one out of left field, I think. So for those that are interested in, the design aspect of video games, so one of the game engines, one of the main ones that is being used. So you've got Unreal, and then you've got Unity. So a bit of a controversial plan that they've released over the last couple of weeks. I think they've tried to walk it back and make it sound not as bad as it was, given the backlash that they got. But essentially, they're changing their monetary policy in terms of what they charge developers, and they're in essence going to a per download. We're going to charge the game manufacturer per download of their game, which for a lot of games that are free to play and relying on either monthly subscriptions or paid DLC or loot boxes or whatever it is, could be borderline catastrophic for them, especially some older games that people might jump back into occasionally, but certainly they don't have the monetary traffic that they used to. But people are still going to download them and have a look at them from time to time. They're basically going to be paying for, in essence, a licensing fee to Unity that they're going to be making very little to no money on. So it could, in essence, bankrupt a lot of companies, despite the fact that they might be sitting okay at the moment. The future fees that that are applicable to that would certainly be damaging, and to the point where we saw the developers of Cult of the Lamb basically come out and say, not long after this was announced, that if this is going to be implemented, then as of the 1st of January, we are removing Cult of the Lamb from all digital stores, so that we refuse to pay that money. So, and then even to the point where I think I saw a tweet or something similar from their main competitor, as I said, Unreal, basically saying, well, this is our pricing structure, we're not changing it, and inviting people to jump on board their engine and their scheme, which is a lot more based around revenue sharing. And even with their revenue sharing, it's more they're basically giving the developer the first $1 million they make on a game for nothing, and then they'll start the revenue share after that point. So the Unity going down this track, I think, is very dangerous and could potentially have a massive impact for game development going forward if this is the case. Certainly for people that were thinking about using that engine to develop their games, or in fact games that are well down the path of being developed, whether they say, well, we can't continue this because it's going to cost us too much money down the track, and they pull up stumps and then have to basically restart the whole thing using Unreal or a different engine. I think it's got a massive impact on the gaming industry as a whole. And I guess probably shouldn't be surprised, because the CEO of that is currently the CEO of Unity is an old head honcho of EA back in the old deep dark Star Wars style loot box games. So my opinion is extremely predatory, giving very little warning. 3 or 4 months warning. Or heads up for developers, really, when you're talking about games that are taking 4, 5, and 6 years to make, is not nearly enough time to give them time to either pivot or make decisions about it. I think it's got massive ramifications if they end up pushing through with it. And the reality is, the amount of people that have already indicated that they're pulling out, not using Unity, could end up coming back to bite them in the backside. But at the bottom of the day, the bottom line is this is corporate greed at its absolute finest.
Yeah, it screams of it, doesn't it? Just money grabbing with no consideration for the long term. They're just, this will make us a quick buck in the next financial year. Flick that switch. Just zero thought given to it. It's crazy. It's just baffling to me that it would happen. It's in my mind, it's the equivalent of going out and changing the speed limit on a road today and then going back over the past year and finding everyone who didn't abide by today's new speed limit. It just makes zero sense of why they ever thought this was going to work or cross over the line. I got no idea what they're thinking over there. Ace, any thoughts from you, mate?
Look, mine might be a little bit of a controversial take, but I understand these companies, they're always going to try and look for ways to push the bottom line and make a little bit more dough. So, and if, sort of us, the consumers, we want those next level of graphics, and we want them to keep, designing that next gaming platform that's going to sort of take it to that next level, that, we sort of need to pay for it. So in a sense, I get it. I don't know exactly the in and outs of how much Unity are making, on sales of games and what companies have to pay to use their platform, but obviously it's not enough, and obviously some of these other developers are making more than them, and they're looking at those companies going, well, where's our piece of the pie? So I kind of get it, and as long as things keep coming out that are pushing the boundaries and making games more excitable and more enjoyable, and sort of showing us new things, new graphics, new styles of gameplay, then I kind of have to say, all right, well, you guys are the masters, the gatekeepers, and what do I have to pay to keep playing?
I guess from that point, mate, it could just be a marketing snafu whereby they do have some grand new vision for the next engine and they just haven't shared it yet. Like maybe they just didn't fully deliver on, well, there's going to be this massive price change, but it will enable XYZ in a year or 2 years, whatever. It's a valid point you make, mate. I haven't heard any side of that. Bully, did you read anywhere as to what they said the money was going to?
I haven't seen what the money's going to, but I was reading something today. So if you go through and look at the actual fine print of the increased fee, so there's a number of different tiers that you have access to be able to use the Unity engine, and essentially there's, in essence, a free version of it as such. And that is what they're going to be charging at the highest level, that one. And then the next lowest tier is what they're really going to be pushing this, charging per download once you hit a certain amount of downloads lifetime. What they do have is, and I think it's, I can't recall the actual price per, but I think there's something that the top tier access to the engine is something around the $50,000 to $100,000 US a year subscription fee to it. And if you're on that level, then the base level of lifetime installs increases dramatically to hundreds of thousands to into the millions before you would then be having to pay this increased fee. So I guess the other thing and the other way to look at it is maybe they're trying to push companies off that lower tier subscription or the free subscription up to the base level, so that as a company they're saying, well, we can guarantee that we're going to have X amount of companies paying that yearly subscription fee. So we know every year this is essentially within a couple of $1 million. This is what we're going to be bringing in as a company, and then anything on top of that from this increased fee charge would then be just I guess cream on the top. But and I can understand that to a degree, that it gives some stability within the company so that they know what finances they have coming in. But I think overall, that when you hurt what you're doing is you're not going to be hurting big developers and big AAA publishers and that sort of thing, because they're going to be on that highest tier anyway. What you actually are doing is hurting the indie scene and the smaller studios that are really going. They can't forecast 5 and 6 games down the track. They're basically living game to game in the hope that each game they put out is going to make them enough money to fund the next game. And I think they're ultimately the ones that are going to be hurt out of this, whether you're pushing them up to that higher tier of subscription or whether you end up charging them more because of lifetime downloads. I think that's where my biggest concern is, that you're essentially really harming those studios. And the fact is they do have alternate options. As I mentioned, Unreal has come out and sort of basically backed a lot of those smaller developers and said, hey, come over to us. We've got a much fairer revenue sharing scheme. We'll give you the first $1 million for free, and after that we split profits because you've used our engine. So there is other options available to them. It's just I think you're just hurting the smaller developers rather than taking money off the bigger companies that probably can afford the extra fees.
Oh, well, time will tell how that goes. Let's move on then, shall we? The new releases this week. I wonder how many of them were made on Unreal Engine.
I don't have that breakdown, but we do have Gloomhaven, September 18, 2023, for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch. I'm not sure I know too much about that. Lies of P, which we've already spoken about on the PlayStation consoles, Xbox consoles, PC, Mac, released a couple of days ago on the 19th, getting very good reviews. Also on the 19th was Mortal Kombat 1. So basically a revision of the original on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. Interestingly, hasn't come out for the previous gen consoles.
Has anyone gone hands-on with Mortal Kombat 1? Because I heard originally that there was like a little bit of an RPG element to it, sort of moving around, and I sort of haven't heard anyone say anything about it, and they might have just been whispers, and I could be completely wrong, and it's just a straight-up fighting game.
No, I've yet to go hands-on with it. I can't speak to that. You, Billy?
No, fighting games aren't my jam, but this one's getting some particularly good reviews. So, if you are a fighting fan, it's looking pretty good. Then we move on to You Suck at Parking, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. That one did, I think it's still on Game Pass for memory. You Suck at Parking, fun little arcade game. It was, I quite enjoyed it.
I can confirm I do suck at parking.
Well, now you can suck at parking in a video game as well. Party Animals, which we did discuss, came out yesterday for the Xbox consoles only, and straight on to Game Pass there. Days of Doom, which I don't know much about, on the PlayStations, Xboxes, Switch, and PC, released today. Payday 3 also coming out today on the PS5 and Xbox X and S. Again, we're starting to see more and more of this. It's just the current gen rather than previous gen consoles that they are releasing onto. That'll be an interesting one to have a look at as well, also on Game Pass. And as we mentioned before, Resi 4, the Separate Ways DLC releasing today for added content on all the consoles that Resi 4 is currently available for. And that is the new releases for this week.
Beautiful work, Bully, and thank you to Game Informer for making that list possible each and every week. Now it's time for everyone's favourite segment, the Standoff.
Who will fight?
Fight. And who is fighting for us this week, please, Bully?
Well, it might be the three of us fighting by the time we get to the end of this list. 2023, as I mentioned at the start, has been, from my mind, one of the biggest years in game releases that we have seen in a long time. There has been some fantastic games released. And as we start to ramp up to what is traditionally the biggest release schedule a couple of months leading into the holiday season, we are asking, what is 2023's biggest game or our favourite game so far released this year?
And Entrant 1, do you want to speak about it again, Ace? Entrant 1, Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, do we need to say anything else about it? Because you got your clear winner. So, do we need to move any more forward? That's
All right,
that's the end of the segment.
Is done for the evening. Tears of the Kingdom, a winner is you. No, Tears of the Kingdom. I think we have already covered this one fairly well today. I obviously haven't gone hands-on with it. Bully, was there any other additional points you'd like to make, considering the constraints?
No, but if I did know that Ace was so red hot on it, I would have had to bump this down to the last one. At least let us run through the list before you make a decision. But no, fantastic game. As Ace alluded to earlier in the show, it's the graphical style does look very deceptive. It's not a kid's game. There's a lot of puzzle elements, a lot of thinking. The combat's difficult. It is a fantastic game, and one of the few games that you can literally say will drop you into the world, and wherever you go and whatever you do is entirely up to you. You can do whatever you want. There's no quest that you necessarily have to follow. You can just go off and spend your time how you want to spend your time, and if you want to do quests, do the quests. If you want to just explore, and there is certainly plenty of things to find out in the world.
Perfect. Now, the second entrant this week, Hogwarts Legacy. Small update. My boys are loving this to this day. It's been the school holiday favorite over here. Unky, not Unky at all. Hey, sorry, you're confusing me in the second slot.
Sorry.
Did you end up going hands-on with Hogwarts, mate?
Yeah, look, it was like a game one release pickup because I was super excited about sort of everything that it had promised. And look, once I fired it up, I was thoroughly enjoying it. But probably I think I maybe got about 10 hours in, and I hit this 10-hour mark, and I was like, it's just the same thing, the same enemies, the same repetitive combat style. The storylines were all the same. And as much as like I really enjoyed the graphics, and I think I told you like my character made his voice one shade too deep, which then made him sound like a robot, and I couldn't go back. And there was just some certain weird aspects of it that the game sort of lost me. The world and everything in it was absolutely amazing, and that first 10 hours was incredible. But yeah, I just hit a certain point where I was like, this is just like it's not going anywhere. It's not evolving. The game style isn't happening. I'm not facing new enemies where I have to come back and change my fight style. It was very much just a same 3-button repeat sort of system.
Fair criticism, mate. I fell off at about the 15-hour mark. I think I made it to the third season. How did you fare with it, Billy? You wrapped up, did you?
Yeah. I went through and completed the main story and most of the side quests. I think I really enjoyed it. I'm a massive Harry Potter fan, so being able to wander around the school and some of the different surrounds and things that you'd read about in the books or seen in the movies and that sort of thing that was sort of brought to life to the point where you weren't just seeing it from a director's point of view as to how they wanted you to see. You could wander around and explore it yourself and find all the little nooks and crannies around Hogwarts and the secret areas and all that sort of stuff. I really enjoyed it. My only criticism was, and I can sort of see where you're coming from, Ace, with that there wasn't a lot of variety in the combat and the enemies and stuff. There's basically two sections to the map. There's the Hogwarts area that you start with, and an area sort of north and south of that, including the town, which
all roads lead to Hogsmeade.
Hogsmeade, that's it. which I think they ended up patching that out, that constant chatter about Hogsmeade. But there is actually a second area to the map, which is almost the same size as that first bit. And for mine, it could have done without that. That was another 15 to 20 hours, if I recall, of gameplay through that second area of the map. If they had have just ditched that and made that first area, the open world area, and the outside area a lot tighter, and packed more things into it, more things to see and do, and all the rest of it, I think that probably would have made for a better experience. And as I said, probably if they had thrown in some different encounters with enemies and enemy varieties rather than fleshing out more of an open world, I think that would have made for a much better and tighter game. But overall, I really loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But I can see, if you're not a massive Harry Potter fan, it might have that bit of magic to start with, but pardon the pun, but certainly I can see how it would wear off fairly quickly. And unless you're a massive fan and you're really engaged in the world, I can see how it can drop off pretty quick.
I guess the final point I'll make about it is I am actually keen to finish this before the Game of the Year discussions. And even just watching this footage now, I'm like, oh, I should really get back to it and try and finish it off. As I said, I think I've only got one season to go. I'm close. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's still in running for Game of the Year, surely. All right, Game 3 this evening. Now, I know Ace is a hard pass. So I'll let you take it, Bully.
Well, we have mentioned a couple of times during the show today, but Resident Evil 4 Remake was released earlier in the year. When you talk about remakes, and I know we had Dead Space earlier in the year as well, but which was very high quality. But when you talk about remakes, and you know, we're certainly not going to get this out of Tomb Raider or anything like that, but the art style, the atmosphere, the graphics, the controls, everything was tightened up from the original. Everything was made better. It is, one of the better Resi stories, I think, for mine.
Yep.
They managed to retain that sort of campiness that was in the original and some of the cringeworthy stuff in the original, but even tightened those elements up, that it still had that sort of, elements to it, but it wasn't over the top and overdone. I really enjoyed it. It was a fantastic game, and I went in anticipation for it. Went and played through the original. Well, I shouldn't say the original, but the mastered version that they did for PlayStation 4 a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And how faithful they've been to the story and the setting of it, while also improving pretty much every single aspect of it. It was fantastic in my opinion. I absolutely loved it and thought it was a great time.
Yeah, it was great. I second your points, man. I absolutely love this remake. My one question to you, Billy, I think from my memory at work, but my memory is not the best. Didn't they improve the map, the way the map navigation works in the remake of Resident Evil 4?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot easier to sort of move around the world and work out where you're going, and that was certainly made a lot easier with the update. So. And this just follows on from the line. I think, we saw the remake of Resi 2, which was amazing. Resi 3 sort of okay, but not quite to the high standard, but certainly lifted it back up with Resi 4. I thought it was a fantastic game, and I'm glad that the DLC's come out, and I'll get back into it at some point, because I have been wanting to go through and have another run through and try and mop up a few more of those trophies as well.
Yeah, any excuse will do. How about Entrant 4, Final Fantasy 16?
Final Fantasy 16. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I've played through it and finished it. Amazing game. Now, I know there's been some knocks on the combat, that it's not as varied as what you'd get out of a normal Final Fantasy game. But what you can't deny is the graphics, and you can see it on screen there. It is absolutely one of the most beautiful games that you're ever going to play. The icons, I think they are off the top of my head, the magical abilities that you've got, the summons that you've got, it looks absolutely amazing. I thought the story, even though it probably dragged on a little bit too long, that the story was amazing. It had all these different aspects of different factions and different families and betrayal and I just thought it was an amazing game. I loved every minute of it. It had some fantastic side quests to it. It had a semi-open world in some of the maps that you could sort of explore. it had different things like hunting, go off and hunting massive beasts and all that sort of stuff. I really loved it. I thought it was a fantastic game and really enjoyed it. I think all up, it took me about 65-ish hours to do the main story plus all the side quests. And I absolutely loved every minute of it. I think without, I'm trying to think if there was anything interrupted in the playthrough, but I don't think there was. I think over the space of probably 2 or 3 weeks, I just played through the whole thing and absolutely loved it.
Now, I haven't played it, mate, so I can't speak to it. First question, are there any dogs in it?
Well, is there any dogs? Torgal is a wolf.
Just that Ace just got attacked by one.
That was a special guest appearance by Smudge, my chocolate Labrador. He just came in to say good day. So
perfect. The other thing, Bully, was just the performance. I haven't played it myself, but I hear the performance of the lead actor was phenomenal as well in Final Fantasy 16. But can you speak to that at all?
Oh, absolutely amazing, and not even just the main protagonist, but the characters that are surrounded him as well. I thought they were exceptionally well acted, to the point where if I was that way inclined, Clive would be number one on my list. I think he had me wrapped around his little finger from the get-go.
Nice one. Ace, did you go hands-on with Final Fantasy 16 at all?
No, look, I haven't gone hands-on, but they're one of those games that's right in my wheelhouse, the sort of thing that I'd thoroughly enjoy. But the thing that always turns me off is exactly to what Bully just said before, a 65-hour game with 3 young kids and sporting and stuff like that. There's just, I don't know, by the time you get 65 hours, effectively you get maybe an hour every couple of nights. You stretch that out, it's a hell of a lot of weeks, and unfortunately for me, that a lot of games pop their head up in the meantime, and I tend to get drawn away from them. That game that I'll be playing, but if my wife was to say that she's taking the kids for a month or so,
Bully, book some extra plane tickets, mate.
yeah. Then I could definitely see myself just waking up very early. I might take a bit of time off work. I could see myself waking up and just hooking into it. Yeah, they look exciting, and I every time I've got my hands on, I've thoroughly enjoyed them.
Yeah, good on you, mate. All right, Bully, Entrant 5?
Entrant 5 and a newly released one, Starfield. I think we've discussed it over the last couple of weeks. The more and more I play of it, the more that I'm getting hooked into it with the story and the gameplay elements, and it's good. There's so much to it. It's not just. It's probably one of my criticisms early on was jumping over to different worlds and not having that level of excitement for just being in one area and exploring it. But I've now sort of gotten over that. That I'm really. It interests me jumping from world to world and seeing what's on each different world and how it's the environment that each one's in, whether it's snow or beach or forest or you've got all the different worlds, you've got massive different amount of towns, and even exploring some of the cities and the towns to the point where a lot of the quests and side quests that you'll pick up are just because you're walking through the town and you'll overhear someone say, did you hear Ace is in trouble? The debt collectors were out after him again. And then all of a sudden that pops up as a quest. So you go, right, no worries. Let's go and help Ace out and see about his debt collectors. Just the fact that that's how you get it, rather than, with a lot of RPGs that you wander around a map and look for someone with a yellow exclamation mark or a yellow star over their head. Oh, that's a quest giver. You don't know. So you end up finding yourself just talking to random characters because you never know what you're going to get. There's so many different ways that the story engages with different factions and different things you can do. And, you've got ship upgrades, you've got your settlement building, which, for those that have played Fallout 4 might cringe, but it's actually really well done in this one. There's some fantastic stuff that you can do with both the shipbuilding and the settlement building. The story's really engaging, and I was sort of went 2 ways with this when I found out during the week, and without giving any story spoilers away, but there's a new game plus to it, and the new game plus changes you don't just replay the game itself. It changes the entire way that the story's set up, and it changes the dynamics of the story as well. So essentially, you're playing the game twice, but in an entirely different fashion. So I'm really excited to punch through and do as much of the side quests as I can, get the main part finished, and start a new game plus, and really jump in to see the extra stuff that they've thrown into it, which I think Bethesda said at one point as well, is that they've actually come out and said that the game doesn't really start until you're in New Game Plus. That's when our true vision, sort of comes to light. So there's plenty to play in there. Yes, it's got your bit of Bethesda jank. I was talking to Ace before the show about one of the little hacks that someone's worked out in Alkira. I think it's Alkira, one of the main towns that you're sort of in, and at the front of one of the shops is a puddle where you can go to the puddle, put your cursor over it, and basically take all the items out of the shop for free, and then go back into the shop and sell them all to him. And you can get some quite high level weapons and spacesuits and that sort of stuff with it. So it's got the Bethesda jank, but to me, that's always been a lot of the charm with it. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a fantastic game, and I'm really pleased for both Bethesda and Xbox, because I think we've mentioned various times over the last sort of 6 to 12 months in anticipation of Starfield that this was really had to hit, and if it didn't, I think both companies were in a fair bit of strife.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was some allusions to that with the documents that were released earlier as well. But I haven't gotten back to Starfield this week because Entrance 6 has my soul at this point. I am absolutely loving Baldur's Gate 3.
Can I just say, I think Starfield's got my vote, and I haven't even played it yet. That's how much anticipation I have for this game, and I love the Bethesda jank, and I tell you what, I cannot wait. And I think without even going hands-on, just watching the videos, I'm all in.
Nice, Ace. I love your commitment to it. But have you ever played a game where the devil appeared and offered, if you sold him your soul, he'd solve your current problem?
You were telling me a little bit about this the other day. What was your final choice and decision in the end?
Oh, I hard passed on the devil, but what a game. It's just got all these sort of different story beats that I haven't come across in video games before. They're pulling little bits in from here and there from, books and movies and stuff. But the way they have jam-packed this game with totally different ideas and ways to think about it, back to back to back, I'm totally hooked on just playing it a bit more to unravel a bit more of that story, or find a new side character, or learn a bit more about their quest. You just don't see it coming. It's constantly surprising me with story beats, and I love the moment-to-moment gameplay. I love the turn-based dice rolls. I absolutely love. For me, Baldur's Gate 3 is winning this list so far. Bully, have you put much more time into it, mate?
No, I haven't, and I've probably gone the opposite way with Starfield, where Baldur's Gate really got my attention initially. I've really sort of gone all in on Starfield as opposed to Baldur's Gate, but they're very different games, but very similar in that you can go about it however you want. If you want to go off and do this quest, you go off and do this quest. But even when you get to that particular quest, with Starfield, you can go in guns blazing, you can stealth it, you can use persuasion and your speech and all the rest of it. Very similar to Baldur's Gate, where you can do a full frontal attack, which from my playthroughs is not always the best option. Or you can sneak around, you can persuade, you can talk, you can add members to your party and have different party configurations and spell and weapon configurations, and just a different variety of options. I think that you've got available to you in Baldur's Gate is really what has taken my fancy with it. And I agree with you. It's quite funny because actually, there's a lot of games that have that dice roll mechanic that runs in the background that you never actually see, and you're not aware of it. But the fact that they actually bring the die up on screen and you see it rolling, I just think adds to the intrigue. And it's almost we spoke about loot boxes and that sort of thing before. It's almost that similar sort of thing where you get a roll of the dice and you go, oh yes, I got that one, or come on, I was one off. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, definitely, mate.
And then you go into that, do I save scum and go back and try and re-roll, or do I just accept my fate and that's how it is and we push on? But amazing game, and it actually looks amazing. The level of detail in it's fantastic, and I haven't played the PC version. I know Unky has, but certainly the control scheme, which isn't always the case with PC games coming over to console, the control scheme for mine is very intuitive and works really well on a console.
Yeah, it really does. And A should be happy to know, mate, they're bringing this to Xbox. So when you do get an Xbox at Christmas, fingers crossed it might be in Game Pass for you. You won't have to part with any cash.
It is on the wait list, this one. So, yeah, I remember playing the old school Baldur's Gate 2, I think, on the old PC back in the day when I had a little less hair all over my body. So, no, I'm very interested. And once I sort of get through Tears of the Kingdom, this will probably be next cab off the rank.
Nice one. All right, Billy, what's rounding out the list this evening for Entrance 7?
The rounding out the list, so Diablo 4, which I know we've spoken about. I think Ace has put a bit of time into it as well. I probably put about 15 to 20 hours into it when it was first released, and then, as I mentioned before, got very sidetracked onto Final Fantasy 16 and haven't really gone back to it. But I don't know if you guys have put much more time into it.
I think I'm at about 35, maybe 40 hours in, level 50. I think I've just hit character-wise, but everyone's heard my thoughts. Ace, yours.
Yeah, very similar. I think one character, I think last time we spoke about it, I was working on the mage after I probably pumped like 15 hours into the barbarian. Then I switched over to the mage, probably pumped 40 hours into the mage, and then I switched over to the necromancer and started mucking around with that. And then, I sort of just started hearing things about the battle pass sort of schematics of it, and effectively, like, character, you would know your character that you'd pumped all these hours into was now obsolete, and that you would need to start a new character to run through the same storyline with maybe some added on things at the end. And it just sort of really got me a bit disheartened, and I just ended up putting it on the back burner, and I actually deleted it probably about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, there you have it.
I put this game sort of in that same category as Hogwarts Legacy. Like, started off really well, had all the right things and was doing all the right things, and the graphical was really nice and the gameplay was really nice, and it just got a little bit repetitive in sort of the gameplay. And I was just like, I just want a game that when I go to that next area, there's something different. There's a new mechanic. So the two of the big games for me, Tears of the Kingdom and obviously Starfield, which I haven't played, look like that's the sort of game that they supply. You're in Area 1, you go to Area 2, and it's completely different to Area 1. So, unfortunately, this game went on the back on the shelf.
Yeah, fair call, man. I can't see myself getting off Baldur's Gate 3 anytime soon to go back and pump more hours into Diablo 4. My money is on Baldur's Gate 3 for this week. But, gentlemen, where are you sitting?
Well, I'm going to go.
We know where Ace is sitting with Tears of the Kingdom.
I'm going to go controversial, and this has probably never happened on the show before, so you can clip this one for you. But for me, it's Starfield, and the anticipation of playing Starfield is enough for me.
Nice.
And look, I do love Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but in a lot of ways, it is just a rebranded Breath of the Wild. And although they've done a better job of it and they've increased it, but for me, Starfield, just the prospects on that is enough to make me go and buy an Xbox. And I said I wouldn't buy an Xbox since I got the 3 Rings of Death, and this game is getting me back on the wagon.
High praise, mate. I love it. Bully, are you sitting firm on Starfield?
Oh, I don't know where to go. To be honest, I could make an argument for any one of these games on the list in some way, shape, or form, and that's why it's such an interesting topic. And as I mentioned at the start, that we've had some fantastic games released this year. Maybe it's just some recency bias, but I love Final Fantasy 16. I thought that was amazing, but certainly for me, it'd be a toss-up at the moment between Starfield and Baldur's Gate. And given that I'm probably deeper into Starfield, I'd probably just have to slightly lean towards there. But that's not to say if I don't step off the show tonight and get back into Baldur's Gate, that wouldn't change my opinion by this time tomorrow. But as it stands, I might go with Starfield as well.
Fair enough. There you have it. Starfield, a winner is you for our current leader for the Game of the Year rankings. Congratulations, Bethesda, on a fantastic job. Gentlemen, do you think if any of these games had come out last year, they would have definitely won? It's funny, this year's so jam-packed with, almost 10 games. It's crazy. 10 out of 10.
I suppose what we were looking at last year was the new God of War game, I think, was right up there.
Don't forget Stray.
Stray.
Ragnarok took it out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that was a pretty tough game. Looking at this list, I even with Tears of the Kingdom, Ragnarok would have been a pretty hard game to beat.
Fair call. Fair call.
Oh, I'd probably go the other way. I could think I could look at this list now, and I could put 4 games in front of God of War. Just looking at that list right now.
Nice. Well, we will continue this conversation in December for the Game of the Year conversation. But it is now time for the 4th segment, audience integration. Bully, can you please tell me what's been happening in their YouTube chat? If it's in fact working tonight, it hasn't worked for the last 3 weeks. Anything on your screen, Bully? I know mine's not loading.
As in the live screen.
The chat, yeah, my chat window is not happening.
My apologies. I've just had a slight issue with my headphones.
worries.
Certainly. So finally, after a couple of weeks of downtime, we have managed to get the chat back up and running. And I will say a welcome to Unky Dunky, who has joined us from his Japan trip.
Hi, Unky.
And has mentioned that he has been out to Osaka Universal Studios and went to Kyoto this afternoon, having a fantastic time out there. And even though he's many kilometres away and a different continent of country, he's still flexing on his hashtag Real Gamer, telling me that he's already beaten the first 3 bosses on Lies of P. He has told us that there is more outfits. He's unlocked 6 of them, along with some weapons.
Did he answer the nose extending question?
No, he didn't. But he did. But he did say it's a 40-hour game. So there is that as well. And we also had in the chat as well Tigaro.
Hey, Tigaro.
Jumping back in there for us. And he's really excited. Hadn't heard previously about the Fallout 3 remake / remaster, so he's certainly extremely excited about that one. And also the Tomb Raider remake, although I think he might share some of the concerns I've got in terms of how that is going to be. And also he's jumped in there and mentioned that he's been very unimpressed with the PlayStation Plus monthly offerings for the last couple of months as well. His hope for the next couple are Callisto Protocol and Gran Turismo 7. That's his hope for the next couple of months. I think you'll be a bit disappointed, I think. But that's pretty much it for the chat.
Nice work. Thank you. That'll do it for us this evening. We are off duty. Ace, mate, thank you for coming in off the bench for Unky Dunky and filling in beautiful work this evening in the second slot.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to respond to you. I was at the podiatrist when you messaged me, and I was like, oh, I should message him back. And then it wasn't until I was eating dinner, I was like, oh, shit.
It's all good, mate. We got there in the end. And Bully, thank you, sir, in the third slot, holding us up beautifully all evening, mate. Great work.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always.
And
I will have to say I will be out for the next couple of weeks, as mentioned earlier in the trip, over to the good old US of A for a bit of a family trip over there. So hopefully I can do some game hunting for the collection as well, as I round up towards 1,500 physical in the collection.
Nice. And make sure you get into a Chuck E. Cheese so you can be all up on the Five Nights at Freddy lore. Sorry, Ace, go, mate.
But don't we run on PAL and they run on a different system, so you can't buy games in the US and run them on your PS5 and Xbox?
PS5 and Xbox, you can. They're region free. There is Switch is region free. There's probably half the consoles across the lifetime are region free, and the ones that aren't, there is some fairly easy workarounds for to get PAL games or to get NTSC games running on the PAL system. So there is options available.
When I went there, this was when I was young, I bought Ken Griffey Jr. for the Nintendo 64. And I came back and I was like, I've got this Ken Griffey Jr. game. And then I went to plug it in the 64 and it didn't work. I was like, oh.
The N64 is probably one of the easier ones. If you take the top cover off and just remove the cartridge slot, that's the only thing that stops it. There's no chip in it or anything. It's just the cartridge slot won't allow the shape of the NTS cartridge into the actual 64 console. So if you just remove the flaps on the cartridge slot, you can actually just play it straight up.
Where were you when I was like 13?
Ace, get round to your parents' house, dig out the old box, find it, pop the lid, and you're away, son.
Will you be going to any NFL games if you can get over there? You follow NFL?
I was hoping to, but I think most of the states we're in at the time, the local team's out of state. So I'm hoping to try and get to a college game, but we've booked tickets for a Clippers and Nuggets game while we're in LA. So that'll be a good one.
Oh, is the season started then?
I think it's still pre-season. But I
did.
After when my wife booked the tickets for us, she did have a look at where it was. I think it's somewhere around Compton is the
good luck.
The LA Clippers home game. So
good luck.
I was a little concerned finding that out, I guess.
Just a white dude in Compton. No issues.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
All right, guys, that'll do it for this week. Thank you very much for watching the Gaming Enforcement Agency. Keep your eyes on the channel. More Let's Installs to follow. Every chance it'll be Party Animals. Is that what it was called? I think so. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Bully, what else can you do with the channel?
You can like it, subscribe it. You'll never miss it.
Oh, that was luck. Hey, that's something. Old Uncle Donkey. Donkey.